Finance in Focus, and we're looking at the intersection of finance, strategy, and technology. And I guess what we're trying to show is that technology can be used in many ways in your business, not only in terms of operations, but actually at the higher levels, the strategic levels, in terms of assisting you to make informed decisions. When I looked at the title, it said the evolving intersection, and evolving is very much a relative concept. I think that what's happened over time is that evolution, particularly in technology, has become much more rapid. And most of you will be familiar with this bell curve of adoption of technology, where you start off with the innovators, and then from the innovators, you move to the early adopters, and then you get to this chasm. And once people cross the chasm, you get to the early majority, the late majority, and then the laggards. And typically, in the environment that we've operated in, which is the software environment, from that innovation phase to when you're getting to the laggard phase was about 30 years. And I'm thinking of products like MYOB EXO, which really came to the fore in the late 1990s and went through the innovator early adoption chasm and broad adoption. Where we are now is that we are looking at the piece of software that you are using, which is MYOB Advanced, which is really at this early adopter stage and about to cross the chasm, where you will get to a point where 25% of businesses will be using it. The 25% benchmark is used, and I'll refer back to that in a moment, as well as to why 25% is an important percentage. So interestingly enough, as a company, Kilimanjaro is also dealing with EXO as a product, which is definitely getting into the late majority and probably into the laggard stage where we are now. And we are still selling the occasional EXO site, but certainly have a large volume of thousands of clients still using that software. Now, I was trying to find something that represented the rate of change pre-industrial revolution and post-industrial revolution, and found this painting by an artist called Anna Ancher. She was born in 1859, so presumably she had some memory of what agriculture was like in the mid 1800s, where it was subsistence agriculture, very little mechanization, people just doing what they did, hand labor and so on and so on. So you went from this more or less in the, let's say, the late 1850s, you went into the introduction of electricity in the 1870s. By the way, prior to that, you had the Industrial Revolution and steam power in the 1780s, electricity in the 1870s, electronics in the 1970s, robotics and big data in the 2010s. And you'll see over there, that slide actually says AI. AI in that context, I don't think we really understood what AI was about. It was more about fuzzy logic and machine learning, but we called it AI. And then in 2022, remote access virtual teams, which is crazy to think that in 2020, prior to 2022, having a seminar like this online would have been very, very difficult, if not virtually impossible. But to go from there in, let's say, the 1860s, you had very little change in agrarian society, very little change. And I looked up in Google to see when man had domesticated oxen as draft animals, and it's about 10,500 years ago. So for a long time, nothing changed. And then all of a sudden, things started to change, Industrial Revolution, and you started using steam power, the adoption of technology in businesses to improve outcomes in businesses that happen to be agriculture. To go from there, in 1860 to there where we are today, my daily commute to work in North Sydney, about 160 years. And so it took 160 years to get from there to there. Now, if we go back to the 25%, we're saying that the adoption of electricity took about 45 years for 25% of the population to adopt that. If you look at telephones, it took about 35 years for the 25% of the population. This is the US, by the way, to adopt that. And you can see the shrinking time zone of how long it took people to adopt technology. Mobile phones, you were looking at less than 15 years until 25% of the population adopted technology, and smartphones less than 5 years, which is pretty amazing to look at. As you know, the name of our company is Kilimanjaro Consulting, and I had on my bucket list to go and see Mount Kilimanjaro, the highest mountain in Africa. And in doing so, I had the opportunity to interact with some of the local herdsmen, tribe called the Maasai. They look after cattle. And what really amazed me was that these people have also adopted technology. If you do a close-up on the belt of one of those Maasai warriors, you'll see his iPhone safely tucked away over there. But they have adopted technology. And I did find this quote, which coincidentally said, a Maasai warrior on a cell phone in the middle of Kenya has better mobile comm than President Reagan did 25 years ago, which is pretty amazing. So as a further illustration of the rapid adoption of technology and how these time zones are getting compressed, and there is a date which I have listed as the 30th of November 2022, where something happened. What happened on that date was ChatGPT was launched. And there would be very few people on this seminar today who have not heard of ChatGPT. We're literally looking at less than a year and a half ago when it was launched. So the uptake of technology, where we were measuring it previously in aeons and then centuries and then decades and then years, you are now measuring it in weeks. So you went from 0 users of ChatGPT to 1 million users of ChatGPT in less than 2 weeks, which is absolutely remarkable when you think about that. Now, when I found this chart, there was something here called Del-E, and I wasn't entirely sure what Del-E was. Turns out that Del-E is actually a piece of software that is in the same stable as ChatGPT, and this is the creation of images using a plain language model. It's very difficult for computers to differentiate between what is real and what isn't real. So if you look at this picture, we look at it and we know immediately there's something wrong with that. We know that the Yeti doesn't exist, and we can look at this and say this is, must be some sort of a doctored photo. If we look at these ones, it's much more difficult. But when we look carefully, again, we may know that these are not real photos because our brains tell us there's something wrong with that. But if you look at where we are now with this type of image creation using artificial intelligence, none of those faces are real. Those are computer-generated images where the computer was tasked with creating images of people that consumers would trust. So my face doesn't appear there. So in short then, artificial intelligence refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines programmed to mimic human actions and tasks. And you can see how rapidly this is evolving. And we need to get on board as early adopters to make sure that we can take on board this use of technology in our own businesses. I did have some confusion as to what was artificial intelligence and what was machine learning. Machine learning is really simply a subset of artificial intelligence and is already being used quite widely in the software that you're using today, where you see this sort of predictive text happening when you're typing in something into, whether it's into Google or whether it's into MYOB Advanced. And you will see this encroaching into your web-based technology on a daily basis as all sorts of web-based software start incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning into it. So I guess what today is about is recognizing that technology is actually now at the center. Whether you look at your business through a lens of finance, operations, and strategy, technology is central to making those function and to improve productivity in those areas. You may be looking at it through the lens of people, processes, and systems. Again, technology is at the center. And you may be looking at it through a lens of complexity, risk, and growth. Again, technology is at the center. And the reason for this is that using technology, clearly, you can improve efficiency in your businesses. in any way. And not only that, you can do it quickly, affordably, and with low risk, particularly if you're in a piece of software like MYOB Advanced, where in the ecosystem, integration with best of breed systems that incorporate these technologies is relatively simple. Using APIs or using integration as a service, this becomes available to you quickly. And I think the lesson today is that one has to keep moving at the pace that the competitive landscape demands of you. If you're not moving quickly, you're going to fall behind your competitors. This is just a brief snapshot of our own website of what types of connected services there are out there. There are many more than that. I'm not going to go through that now. I'm going to hand you back to Stephen, and thank you all very much for attending today. I hope you have a very successful and informative session. Thanks, Stephen. Over to you.